back to Combat Society. It's great to be back for another show. Just this weekend, the UFC was in our home city of Melbourne, and we didn't get the card we hoped for, but it was still quite interesting nonetheless. We obviously had Israel Adesanya versus Anderson Silva, which took over as the main event, and that was quite an interesting bout. We're also going to speak on next week. We have UFC Pheonix, Francis Ngannou versus Cain Velasquez. That's an interesting heavyweight clash. And also, Bellator is having Michael Venom Page versus Paul Daley, which we'll speak on. But first, we'll get into that UFC Melbourne card. The main event.
Yeah, Israel Adesanya, Anderson Silva was promoted to the main event after Robert Whittaker pulled out with a hernia and had emergency surgery the day of the fight. But going back to the fight, Israel won by decision, and I think it was a clear victory. Israel pretty much outpointed him, was landing a lot of leg kicks. The strikes were getting through. Anderson was returning fire, landing some counters here and there, which did make the crowd go wild every time Anderson did counter Israel. And Israel didn't really know how to take it. He sort of was bewildered by the shots, couldn't believe that he was actually getting hit. But it was really interesting, a lot of showboating, a lot of standing in front of each other and bait and trying to bait the other person to come in and risk being countered, stuff like that. But in my opinion, a clear victory for Israel. As I did mention on the previous show, I did say that this could be a possibility, that it was going to be a technical battle and there wouldn't be much action. Even though there was a little bit of action, there wasn't really any heavy shots, any really real power shots that landed.
The biggest shots were probably the ones that Anderson let Israel take.
Yeah, absolutely. Anderson was doing the showboating, standing there and just moving and
sometimes
Israel
just staying still.
That's right. And Israel with his accuracy was able to get through with those punches. And a clear victory for Israel. What do you think of it?
Yeah, so Israel had now beaten Anderson Silva, but people are questioning now, does he deserve the title shot? Because Israel has not beaten anybody really inside the top 5. He beat Derek Brunson, who was like a 7-8 ranked fighter, and now he's beat Anderson, who's probably not even a top 10 fighter right now. So we have to look at it logically. If you're talking about does he deserve the next title shot, well, what do you mean by that? You have to really understand what does it mean by to deserve. Do you deserve it because you make a lot of noise and you win fights and you talk a lot? Well, then you deserve it. But if you're saying, is he the best fighter right now? Probably not. He hasn't versed those guys like Jacare, Weidman, Luke Rockhold. So in my opinion, he doesn't deserve it in that aspect. But it's not about what I want. It's about what the fans want. And if the fans want to see him fight for the title against Robert, then I'm okay with that.
Yeah, so Israel had a clear plan coming into this fight that he was going to win, and Robert Whittaker versus Kelvin Gastelum was going to happen, and there would be a winner there also, and then he was the clear number 1 contender to fight for the title for either one of them. But obviously that fight didn't happen. Kelvin Gastelum sitting there walking around with Henry Cejudo's belt, keeping his name out there, doing a Chael Sonnen tactic. Obviously Chael Sonnen's in Melbourne. That was his coach on The Ultimate Fighter. Obviously, he's getting advice from Chael to become a heel, keep a name out there, and that is working. We're talking a couple of days after the fight. Even now, people are still talking about Kelvin Gastelum because he's walking around with the belt, he's claiming he's the champ, keeping his name out there. And what we tend to see sometimes when these fights fall out is the challenger who didn't get to fight fades out, and no one really talks about that person anymore. And then the next person will come in and fight for the title. And that's the kind of situation that maybe Israel could have been in. He could have leapfrogged Calvin and maybe fought Rob. But now that Kelvin Gastelum's still keeping his name out there, I believe they have to rebook that fight. And Israel, he's not the clear number 1 contender now. Kelvin Gastelum, in my opinion, still is. And Israel needs to fight somebody in the top 5, get a win, and then he can fight for the title.
But I agree. But if you think about where Israel sits now, I believe this is one of the best situations for Israel. I really do, because there's a period of time where Rob's not fighting now. Israel's just won. So there's a time where they both not going to be fighting. And when they both come back to fight, they could potentially just work out, and it could just be them two.
It could be.
Think
absolutely.
about it. Israel won't fight for another couple of months, 3 months, 4 months, whatever he wants. He's not injured, nothing. He can fight whenever he wants, really. But he can wait that 4 months, 5 months when Rob comes back and just get that shot. If he really wants, it could definitely just happen that way.
Yeah.
Calvin, people argued that maybe he didn't deserve that. He didn't really verse a lot of people either. He did get submitted by Weidman, and then Weidman lost to Jacko. So maybe he would get somebody else. So Calvin could lose the spot. Israel could get the spot. So it's not clear who is actually going to get it. Paulo Costa's now in talks, and Yoel Romero. You're not hearing Israel talk about Yoel Romero much, but Paulo Costa's in the talks as well now.
Yeah. So, yeah, they're obviously two potential fights that Israel can take, but they're really hard fights. He's doing the Conor McGregor strategy where he's trying to it is really cherry picking, but that's fine. If you make enough noise and you're popular enough, you can make that happen. But in this case, there was no title fight on Sunday, which means Israel's plan of what he was planning to do, which was just win and then fight for the title straight away, that's been derailed. He has to come up with a new strategy now. He needs, in the fans' eyes, I think most people are going to be saying that he needs to fight somebody else. In the meantime, a top 5 guy, not none of these journeymen, a serious contender. Yoel Romero, Weidman, Jacare, any of these guys, fight one of them, and then you'll be ready for a title shot. He could even fight Gastelum. Who knows? But his plan's been derailed. Definitely.
We also had some interesting fights. Below that fight, we had Lando Venata. He got a submission win in the first round. That was easy for him. He's not quite what we think as, someone who's going to make some heavy moves in the lightweight division, but nonetheless got the sub. And I believe Marcus Rosa Mariano is a training partner of Anderson Silva. So he didn't get the win. But we also had 2 Aussies on the card as well, on the main card. We had Nadia Kassem, who was submitted by De La Rosa. And we had Jimmy Crute, which we're high on because he does everything right. He always he's undefeated, and he always talks well on the mic. And Aussies love him. And he finished Sam Alvey. But after... Sam Alvey was pleading that stoppage was a bit early, and even Mark Goddard after said that he would have let it go on a few more minutes, and it just raises questions whether these refs are up to it.
Yeah, so what happened was Jimmy Crute, as we know, he comes out aggressive with big power and was able to land the shot early. Put Sam Alvey down. He walked away briefly thinking the fight was over. Mark Goddard was saying the fight wasn't over. He re-engaged and was trying to land ground and pound. It did look like from the angle that we saw it on TV that he was landing clean punches, and then the fight was stopped. But as they showed the slow replay from a different angle, it was clear that the shots actually weren't getting through. Sam Alvey was trying to get a single. He had his arm in front of his head. I think one punch got through, but
he was also putting his hand thumbs up. But
that's right. And the 4 or 5 other punches weren't getting through. It was, in my opinion, maybe it was an early stoppage. The referee agrees afterwards. He watched it, and it actually was early. But I don't think it's too much of a bad thing for Jimmy, because I believe in a controversial stoppage or any situation like this, we're only upset really if we're sure that the better fighter didn't get the decision. But in this case, I believe Jimmy Crute was the better fighter. He proved that. He landed big power and was attempting to land punches on the ground. I think the fight was pretty much over. Jimmy Crute won, and he proved that he's better. So I believe it's okay.
Yeah, much needed win for him, and that skyrockets him in the light heavyweight division. We know that there's not much happening in the light heavyweight division, and he's going to have a difficult matchup next, surely.
Well, he's moving up there. There's some guys middle of the pack. He's coming into the middle of the pack now, and there are some solid guys there that he has to get through. But if he can, as we said last week, if we can breeze through these guys, we're talking maybe a title shot in a year. It's possible.
Anything can happen if he fights like 3 or 4 times more this year.
Yep.
We also had two New Zealanders. So all the New Zealanders won. Congrats to New Zealand. They all won. We had Shane Young, New Zealander, fight Arnett, and he won a decision. Easy decision for him. And Kai Kara France won a split decision over Julian Paiva, the Brazilian. And that was a split decision win, but we thought, I thought going into that last round that it was 1-1, and Paiva won the third round from what I saw. But it was given to Kai Kara France. So
I think Paiva was landing the better strikes more often, but Kai Kara France had some nice forward pressure. There was some crucial moments that may have swayed the judges in the last round. He landed some more powerful shots, some cleaner ones. But I think and then also he got a takedown late, and I think that may have swayed the judges to give him the decision. If it was 1-1 leading into round 3, that might have tipped it over and gave him the decision. But I do believe that Paiva did win that fight because he was landing the better strikes more often. Kai Kara France really only had forward pressure. He was getting tagged coming in constantly. Paiva's jab and right hand were there pretty much every time. Every time Kai Kara France came in, he was just getting lit up, and I believe that was the difference in the fight.
Sure. Before that, we also had the Aussie who made a late replacement for Alex Georges. Callum Potter stepped in to fight Jalen Turner, and Callum Potter was knocked out very early in the fight, and it just proves that you can't just roll up into the UFC and fight. It's hard. It's very hard to fight in the UFC, even against a guy like Jalen Turner.
Absolutely, yeah. It didn't look of UFC caliber, and
he had like a leg lock sequence that he tried to do. Jalen just stepped out of it.
Yeah, that's right. And as you said, there is a level of skill that is required to fight in the UFC, and I don't think Callum Potter's there.
Yeah. Next week we've also got one of the most anticipated heavyweight fights that going around. We have Francis Ngannou versus Cain Velasquez at UFC Pheonix. And that fight is awesome because Cain Velasquez, we know, he's one of the best heavyweights champions that we've seen, and he's fighting one of the hardest hitting heavyweight ever. So that's always going to be fireworks. The only thing we're questioning is whether Cain Velasquez has it still.
Well, that's the thing. He's coming off injuries. He hasn't fought for ages, and we don't know if he's going to be the same Cain. But saying that, if he is the same Cain like we've seen, I believe that Cain wins this fight easily. I believe Cain has more ways to win. I believe he can knock him out. I believe he can take him down. He can smash him. He can submit him. I believe he just has so many more ways. His cardio is on a different level. Francis has one way to win, and that's to land a big power punch on Cain. And going back to Cain's fights, he doesn't get caught with crazy stuff like that. He just doesn't. He's very calculated. He mixes his striking and his wrestling in very fluidly. It's very clean. His technique's perfect. And he's coming from a camp that has strict game plans. They study and they come up with a real technical game plan that is very hard to beat. Now, that's all based on the fact that if Cain is healthy, if he's 100% healthy, I believe he's an easy win.
Yeah, because we know Cain obviously has immense talent. Also, he's got to be healthy. He's got to be the same Cain. He's got to be around those regions. He's got to be good. He's got to be really good, like he was. Because if he's not the same, he could get caught. He has to stick to the game plan. He has to be the same Cain, because anything less, and Francis Ngannou is an up and coming fighter, vastly improving. And he's showing in his game that he's not just, a big power puncher. Against Curtis Blades, who was campaigning for a title shot, versed Curtis Blades and dismantled him. He's a wrestler. He tried to take him down multiple times, got stuffed, and then got knocked out. So if Cain's not the Cain we know and love, then he could get caught. Simple as that.
It's possible. Obviously, anybody can get caught, but I have to say strongly that I believe Cain can make this fight go wherever he wants it to go. I believe he can take him down if he wants it. I believe he can knock him out if he wants it. I believe he can grind him for 5 rounds and win. He has so many ways to win. On top of the fact he's training with absolute killers at AKA Daniel Cormier. The wrestling pressure is it's nothing like what Stipe can bring. So if Francis thought the wrestling pressure of Stipe was bad or hard, then he's got another thing coming when he fights Cain, because that kind of pressure is 3 times as great in my opinion.
Yeah, it's surely going to be a war between these two fellas. Francis Ngannou is if he was scared against Stipe, like he did say, if he's still got those doubts in his mind, then Cain Velasquez is surely going to capitalize.
Absolutely.
So Francis needs to be on his 100% best game.
Yep.
We've also got some interesting fights on this card as well. James Vick versus Paul Felder is a great lightweight matchup. We've got Courtney Casey versus Cynthia Calvillo. We've got Alex Caceres versus Kron Gracie. Vicente Luque versus Brian Barberena. Andre Touchy-Feely versus Miles Jury. We'll speak on Vick versus Felder, a lightweight matchup between 2 guys who aren't really in that like pack of guys you would expect. You know, if we put together a lightweight Grand Prix, they would just be outside it. They wouldn't make it, but
yeah,
still an interesting fight.
Absolutely. I'm going with James Vick here. I think he's just more hungry. He's more aggressive. He wants it more. Because he's young, he still has title aspirations. And Paul Felder is older. He's only got a couple fights left, as he says. He's into commentary. I have to question whether he's training as hard. Is his heart still in it? Is he willing to get knocked out to win this fight? These are all risks that a high-level fighter who wants to fight for a title has to consider. And I don't think Paul Felder's in that kind of frame of mind. So in terms of skill, just raw skill, I'd say they're pretty evenly matched. But I think James Vick's determination is going to be the factor that allows him to win this fight. Yeah,
if we look at their last 2 fights between these 2 fighters, you can see James Vick was knocked out by Justin Gaethje pretty brutally. That was a vicious knockout. He just got knocked out cold. And Paul Felder lost the decision to Mike Perry, who's also a journeyman as well right now, who isn't really up there.
Yeah.
So these 2 fighters, it's make or break for these 2. Whoever loses or wins here, it's going to really make their career.
Absolutely.
Whatever's to come for them. We've also got apparently Kron Gracie versus Alex Caceres is, if all goes well and all the fights say the same, Kron Gracie versus Alex Caceres will be the 5,000th fight in the UFC. So that's a great shout out to the Gracies if Kron Gracie comes in on the 5,000th fight ever.
Absolutely. So this is going to be his debut in the UFC. Yeah. We know that there is a lot of hype around him competing in the UFC because the Gracies are very hyped for good reason. Absolute legends. And anytime you see a Gracie in MMA, everybody pays attention to that. We're talking people from jiu-jitsu want to watch it, wrestlers want to watch it, and the MMA fans want to see what a jiu-jitsu practitioner at the highest level can do in MMA, and can they implement their game plan. And I think he will be able to. If this fight hits the mat, I'd say this fight's pretty much over. I think Kron Gracie will be able to submit him with ease very, very quickly.
Yeah, I'm predicting a submission win by Kron Gracie. Definitely.
Yeah. And we have to look at Kron Gracie, his main training partners. We're talking, we want to see also, has his striking improved since he was fighting at Ryzen? He's got guys like Nick Diaz, Nate Diaz, Gilbert Melendez, Jake Shields, these guys, all high-level MMA fighters, and these are his training partners. So we want to see how much is improved in the striking as well.
Sure, because it's a different level of caliber in the UFC. So he's trying to, congratulations to him for stepping up into the UFC, not sticking with Ryzen, moving into a better competition and testing himself. So it'll be awesome to see that. So that's UFC Pheonix. We got some. That's gonna be awesome. But also that same weekend will be Bellator 216, Michael Venom Page versus Paul Daley. So we got Michael Venom Page, who is fairly inexperienced in the MMA scene, and we've got Paul Daley, who's had heaps of fights. He's had over 50 fights, been in the UFC, and he's accomplished a lot in his career. But yeah, that is the main event. I'm excited to see it because Michael Venom Page has destroyed every single fighter he's come up against in MMA, and he's made him look silly as well.
Yeah.
He broke Cyborg's head. He cracked his head open and left a hole in his head almost. So we're going to see if he can do this to a guy who is very experienced and who's a legit opponent.
Absolutely. You know, Michael Venom Page he's got a lot of hype around him. He's one of the most viral guys that doesn't fight in the UFC. He's very popular on the internet. He has a lot of highlight reel stuff. But Paul Daley is also, as you said, very experienced, very high level, and it's going to be a really good matchup. Really good.
Yeah, and this is the opening round of the welterweight Grand Prix. I love the Grand Prix. We've said it a million times. Rory McDonald is the title holder for he's the welterweight title holder, so he'll be looking to keep his title. But what a great fight for the opening round.
Absolutely.
We've also got in the co-main event Czech Congo versus Vitaly Minakov. Czech Congo is on like a 7-fight win streak. Correct me if I'm wrong. It could be 7, 8. And he is killing it in Bellator right now. And he's versing Vitaly Minakov, who's actually undefeated, 21-0.
It's pretty good.
I think he's Russian, and these guys, they don't lose.
It's crazy, man. It's crazy.
Yeah, that's going to be a big heavyweight clash. We've also got Mirko Krokop, legend, versus another legend, Roy Nelson. That's going to be pretty awesome to see.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's two big strikers and with big power, and I think that could be a short fight.
Yeah, I think first round someone's getting knocked out.
I think so.
That's Bellator, and it's in Connecticut. Bellator's putting on more and more good fights. This is a really good card. I would have liked to see that on UFC Melbourne. Some of these fights are very, very good.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. And I'm not a fan of... I guess there's nothing they can do about it, but I'm not a fan of... because we also have a UFC card on the same day, you sort of got to choose which fights you want to watch. And you got to pay for... If you do pay, you got to pay for both cards. And you might watch on the main card 2 fights from one, 2 fights from the other. You got to switch between them. It's a bit... You know, for true hardcore MMA fans, obviously for the casuals, intermediates, they would pick one, which would probably be the UFC. But for the hardcores, we want to watch both cards. So in that regard, there's nothing they can do, but it's a bit disappointing.
Yeah, this fight is going to be on DAZN. DAZN is a great streaming platform, and they've got boxing rights, they've got MMA rights. It'd be great to see the UFC get on one of these, but they obviously are signed by the ESPN has the rights, so something like that can't happen. But it would be great if there was one company that could get it all, and you could stream it, pay $20 a month.
Yeah,
I would do that.
Absolutely,
that would be really good, but we can't do that now. Now we're going to get into some comments.
Yep,
that we've been seeing online.
Sweet.
The much needed unanswered questions of the internet. This is a good one. What's next for Francis if he beats Cain? I feel like him versus DC would be like DC versus Rumble times 100. So if Francis beats Cain, wow, that would really put him up there. Obviously beating Cain is a huge accomplishment. It's very hard. The odds are stacked against Francis Ngannou. If he can do it, kudos to him, because everyone's doubting him.
Yeah, I think so. But if he does win, they're not going to give him the credit. They're absolutely not going to give him the credit. They're going to say Cain's done, Cain's old, Cain's not the same Cain, whatever. They're going to say, but they're not going to give him the credit. But Francis should get the credit. In terms of him fighting DC, that's not going to happen. DC has no reason to fight Francis. DC has beat Stipe, who's beat Francis, so there's no need to fight Francis. The only small reason might be to avenge the AKA name, sort of. But other than that, DC's claimed he's got a back injury and he's going to sit out for a while, which I believe means he's going to not fight Brock and also wait for Jones to fight Anthony Smith. And that's really... DC has maybe 1 or 2 fights left, and one of those fights isn't Francis. It's either Jones and Stipe, and that's it.
Yeah, Francis win, there's probably JDS, because JDS has Lewis. That could be a good fight. Francis will eventually work his way up. If he can beat Cain, he can beat a lot of people.
Absolutely.
So, but if Cain wins, Cain's back up there, but he's not fighting DC. So
he's not going to fight DC. He might have to fight. I don't think beating Francis is enough to get you a title shot. Cain has said that if he does beat Francis, he does want to fight for the title straight away. He has said that. So
DC might
vacate. He might fight Jones at light heavyweight, which probably will happen, and that'll be the end of DC. But I don't want to get into a situation in that heavyweight division, because heavyweight division's more solid than the other divisions in terms of clear contenders and who's fighting next. But if we're getting into a situation where Cain is the number one contender and DC is the champion, we could end up like a situation with all the other divisions, like welterweight and lightweight, where there's a lot of confusion, and we don't want that.
Yeah, definitely not. Now this one is not good. They're attacking Adesanya here. Neither of those guys are top 5. Embarrassing for Adesanya. Obviously, they're having a go at Anderson and Israel. If you're looking at these two fighters, they're not. You can't really call them top 5 as of yet, because obviously Anderson's not top 5, but Israel is the main thing we're talking about here, because he hasn't versed anyone in top 5. He's the highest ranked opponent he's probably versed is Derek Brunson, and that would be probably rank 7 or 8, I think he was. So he's not really top 5, but he is a top 5 as well. So he's not, and he is, because I see him around about 5, but he hasn't versed Weidman, hasn't versed Rockhold, hasn't versed Romero, hasn't versed Jacare. These guys make up the top 5. So he needs to verse one of those guys to give himself someone a good under his belt that he's beat. Obviously, beating Anderson Silva has put him up there a little bit more, but he's not anything crazy. Like he shouldn't be number 1 or 2 or 3. Like he can't be put in that scenario yet. And I don't think Adesanya should be embarrassed by his performance. He got a decision win. That's what he needed to do.
Yeah, I don't think it's embarrassing, as the comment said. Let's bring it up again.
Yeah, he said he's embarrassed for
I wouldn't say it's embarrassing. Adesanya is just trying to play the game, and he was about to complete that plan of fighting for a title. But obviously, as I said before, that plan has been derailed now. Now, the next logical move for him would be to fight a top 5 guy. But the way I see it, in terms of UFC rankings, I look at it more like, and what it's becoming is more of like an NBA. If you know the NBA, there's like a thing called power rankings, which is done usually by the media. And the power rankings not necessarily who's beat who or who's at the top of the standings. It's more of who has the potential to beat other teams. So it's more of a theoretical and the word for it is, anyway, it's more of like a theoretical sort of list of rankings, and I believe that's what the UFC rankings have become. Now, for Adesanya, as I said, fight somebody in the top 5 and get that respect.
Yeah, he needs to fight someone there. There's a lot of guys calling him out, as we've said. So he doesn't have. It's not like he's starving for opponent. He has opponents there that can fight him. And it's up to him whether he wants to go about his business in that he will campaign for that shot immediately, or he wants to earn the respect of everybody and fight somebody who really deserves it, like Jacare, who beat some guy who's just below him.
Yeah.
He can't be versing guys outside anymore. This is the time. One more fight. Follow Conor, like what Conor did. He had to fight a guy before he got to the title. He had to fight Chad Mendes, a guy who he was highly unfavored against, and he beat him, and that's what he needs to do. He needs to fight somebody. I would say Jacare would be the next logical fight.
It's a good fight.
Definitely. Now we've got this one. I wish Mousasi was in the UFC. Obviously, Mousasi was signed by Bellator. Previously that, signed by UFC. He left. He was on a crazy streak. He still is on a crazy streak, and he's the Bellator middleweight champion. He last beat Roy McDonald, who's the welterweight title holder. So they did a double champ. Sorry, they didn't do a double champ. They did a champ versus champ fight, and he came out on top against Roy McDonald. So if he was in the UFC, he'd be up there again in the middleweight division, causing havoc. That would be even more stacked division than it already is.
Yeah, I believe he could beat a lot of those top 5 guys. I believe he really could. It's unfortunate that he had to go to Bellator. The UFC didn't do right by him. He was on a massive win streak. They didn't give him the title shot. It's unfortunate. He's a supreme talent, and Bellator's pretty lucky to have him.
Yeah, and he has stated before he's going to retire soon, so we will not see him in the UFC.
Yep.
Which is unfortunate. The last comment we have, it's just this. Robert Whittaker has 0 title defenses, and makes you think, really, what is Robert Whittaker doing? But then it's not up to Robert Whittaker. It's really not Robert Whittaker's fault. Some of it is Robert Whittaker's, but most of it's not. Obviously, he won the belt in 2017. It was an interim title fight, and it was promoted to the undisputed middleweight championship. And then he fought Yoel Romero again, and Yoel Romero didn't make weight. So that's not a title defense. He also had a shot at UFC 221 where he was supposed to versus Luke Rockhold. He pulled out of that, Robert Whittaker, citing an injury. And now he's pulled out again. So, he has 0 title defenses.
What are you going to do? These are things that are sort of out of his control. You can't really... If it happens again, I would say you probably have to strip him at that point, even though that would be a huge blow to the Australian market. Stripping the Australian champion, it would be really bad. But as Dana White says, we got to move on, and sometimes you need to move on. But I hope it doesn't get to that. I hope Rob Whittaker can recover from this, his surgery, come back, maybe go do some experimental sort of treatments, legal ones. I'm referring to stem cells, stuff like that. Hopefully he can come back, rebook this fight or whoever it is, and get a title defense and start really building his legacy, because right now we know he's had fights, but there haven't been title fights, but when the history books are written, when your career's over, all they're going to look at is the numbers, and right now he has 0.
Yeah, that's unfortunate, because Robert Whittaker is one of the hardest working, one of the strongest, one of the the biggest heart. He's a great fighter. He has so much heart, and he puts it all on the line when he fights. He's had wars right now, and he has really nothing to show for it. He just has the title. No defenses, nothing. So I hope he gets healthy and fights regularly, because at this rate, going like this, he's very injury prone, and it's not good for longevity. It's really not looking good for him. Yeah. He might have to retire early. It's looking like he's not going to be a fighter who's going to go past 33 or 34. It's looking like he's going to conk out by that time, by the amount of injuries that he's had, knee problems, everything. He's got broken hands, this, that, the other, everything. Every week he has something wrong. So hopefully he can get healthy. That's all the comments we have. Let's look into the next fight cards that we have. We have Blachowicz versus Thiago Santos. That's the week after UFC Pheonix. We also have UFC 235. That's going to be a crazy card.
Yep.
That is stacked. We've got John Jones versus Anthony Smith. We've got Tyron Woodley versus Usman. We've got Ben Askren versus Robbie Lawler. We've got heaps of good cards. We've got Zabit versus Jeremy Stevens. There's so many good cards. Even after that, there's amazing cards. Masvidal, Till. There's a lot of good cards. We'll definitely be covering all of those. What did we think of UFC Melbourne, though? As a whole, how did we see UFC Melbourne? Because we didn't say that before. We'll say it now. Yeah,
so as a whole, I would say it was average. It was average. There were some good fights on that card, but it was lacking a bit of the household names. But I would say average, yeah.
Yeah, if I was to say this card, I said before, it was very top heavy. I said in the last show. So it was top heavy, and there's just not enough good talent on it. And because of the main event dropping out, we really suffered. It's not good. It's unfortunate, it's in our city, and they couldn't deliver, really. It didn't really deliver. It's probably not going to sell very well. Everyone was selling their tickets online. We saw it. Everyone was selling their tickets. People were getting refunded. I'm sure being there would have been great, but it just wasn't what we expected. There was a lot of fighters that just are not. They're not contenders. They're not doing like it. Just was middle of the road fighters.
Yeah.
And it's unfortunate. Hoping next time they come to Australia, it's going to be good, which should be somewhere towards the end of the year. They'll come back. But yeah, that's all we've got time for. Make sure to go check out all of our social medias, Facebook and Instagram. It's at Combat Society AUS. On Twitter, it's at Combat Society AU. Go like the video, comment, share your thoughts on what you thought of UFC Melbourne and next week's predictions that we made. Also, go check the notification button so you make sure you get all of our updates. Cheers.